All right, coach. Congrats on a preseason win. Probably a lot of good things that you saw out there. Some things that I'm sure you want to kind of look over and reconnect. But what are just kind of some of your overall impressions from the guys and just the way they adapted to a little bit of a new system that looked like you were trying to play out there and
Yeah.
overall getting the result?
Yeah, obviously there's been quite a bit of change in our in particular our defensive setup, but also integrating a few new players in both teams. And so I think some of the things that we talked about is defensive organization from the front. Again, big believer that all good defending starts at the front to make play predictable. And I think for the most part, the guys did a really good job of that. Obviously, there's going to be moments in preseason that just aren't, that and again, I think the toughest thing when you're defending with three up front is a four back system, in particular when their outside backs drop low. And so that was always going to be, we've been going through it the last couple of days, and it's always going to be the toughest one. When you go up against a back three build, it's essentially man for man, so it makes it really easy. So I think the guys, um, like I said, did a really good job of adapting. And then offensively, we just wanted to again just talk about our build shape and how we want to, how we want to build from the back. And I think the first group did it really well. The second group struggled at times, but I think the overall thing too is how do we use this game for those in particular those two principles on both sides of the ball, integrating new players, competing the right way, and then also competing to win. And I think they checked all the boxes. So early days, we've had 8 training sessions, but to be able to put in an effort and play well and get a result, obviously is really pleasing to everyone here.
Dom gets that goal early on, a really nice build up from Diego, among others, and he just kind of finishes it off really nicely. He was telling us a little bit uh, after training last week that last year was pretty tough on him for a number of reasons, both playing
Mhm.
wise and even some kind of personal things. And the loan to Cincinnati didn't go nearly as well
Mhm.
as he probably would have liked, I think. But have you seen anything in him? Not only today, but in the last, 7, 8 training sessions out of him to where I don't know if maybe there's any more of like a hunger or kind of like a desire to sort of get back to what you guys originally hoped to get from him when you signed him.
Yeah, I think again, I think that when we talk about development, it's never in a straight upwards trajectory. It's going to be more loops and probably a lot more downs than ups. And I think it's really about how you frame those moments that don't go well. And I had the opportunity, to sit next to Dom on the way out here. So we spent a lot of time together and just talked about how we thought about it. And his first thing was, it wasn't good enough last year. I got to continue to improve. I got a good mentality, and I need to show everyone that I'm capable of it. So I think that's the most important part is the way he's kind of digested last year and really been on the front foot. And I think the first couple days in training and back home, he had some really good sessions. And then for me today, like again, not just because he scored the goal, Dom didn't put a foot wrong on either side of the ball today. So just a 10 out of 10 performance for Dom, and I think it's a great performance to build upon. And you know how it is. You can train well, but when you perform well in games and then obviously score the goal, that does a number on your confidence and belief, about this year. So just really pleased about, the way he's digested last year and really come out strong in the first part of preseason and then had the performance he had tonight.
Yeah, and it's obviously only preseason, but a great start to preseason, I think,
Mhm,
for him
mhm,
early on.
mhm.
The other guy, and I'll pass you on after this, who I notice him a ton, but I've been watching him since he was 14, so I feel like I always notice him. But Zach Booth,
Mhm.
starting in a little bit more of an advanced position than I'm used to watching him play. I'm used to him as a little bit more of a deeper lying midfielder, and obviously that's your guys' system and everything there. But what did you make of Zach and kind of his first like full game type or game like minutes, I guess, with the club?
Yeah, no, I thought Zach had a really good game. Again, I thought he was dynamic on both sides of the ball. He had some good combination plays. I think he had a couple shots on goal, um, and just really active. And I think one of the things that we were I think below average at last year was transition moments, and I think he found some really good pockets and drove with the ball and created some good opportunities for himself and his teammates. So, I think the first week, I think there's a bit of an adaptation phase for any new player. But I think the last couple sessions that we've had, and I think tonight's performance, just really pleased for him. He's a really, he's a great teammate. He's talented, and tonight he had an opportunity to show, and I think he did a great job.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks, coach. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, Brant, you're up next.
Pablo, congratulations. What do you take from a preseason game like this? Or maybe what is the process through preseason, the different steps that you're actually looking at? Not that winning isn't important.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's I'd kind of break it down to um, three or really two things. So tactically, we wanted to see how the front three defended against a back four, because again, this is going to be our primary defending shape, and not having our left back go all the way back and all the way forward. So with our wing backs. And so it was really about our wingbacks and our front three really connecting, reading cues to get pressure on the ball. And a couple days ago in training, it didn't look great, and so we sat together as a group, kind of talked it over. And so that was what I wanted to look for tactically in this game, was really the connection with the front three, the pivots, and the wingbacks. And I thought they did a really, really good job. And then obviously the way we, the build phase and the spaces that we want to occupy in the vertical channels. That was the part on offense that we wanted to look. So the two areas that we haven't even touched upon yet were the two boxes. And so I think if you just talk about all the phases of the game, then you can't really focus on what's important. So those were the two phases tactically. The other part was winning duels and competing the right way. And so when you get the right mentality, and I think those two phases of the game were executed really well, then you put yourself in a position to win the game. So so those are the two focus areas tactically, and then the mentality piece has to be, and you saw the guys just busting their tails for one another. The communication, the way they competed, I thought was really, really well, really good. So, next game we'll focus on two other areas that we want to that we'll work on in the next few days that we want to highlight, in the Bromby game. So I think every game affords you the opportunity to really hyper focus on the areas that you've been working on. And then obviously, the competing stuff and the mentality has to be there regardless of if we're working on it or not. And so again, just really pleased with after 8 days with a relatively new group, and youngers getting sprinkled in there with Wangio and Omar, to be able to compete the way the guys did. It was a really good performance.
What about on individual player level? That's the team level. How do you gauge progress for, the new guys, Griffin Dillon, and some of the younger players that you're bringing in versus, a veteran like Luna? How do you gauge their progress, and what do you obviously got to expect different things from different players?
Yeah, no, I think what we're looking at, Brent, is what does it look like? Because again, for me, the MLS Next to MLS is you're skipping a couple levels, if not a few levels. It is a huge jump. And so I think the expectation always starts at zero. And I think it's more so to protect the player. Like Griffin has been excellent when he's come up in the past, and trained with us. But now it's a different game because the psychology is not that I'm a Monarchs player, just temporarily with the first team, because there's really no expectations that anyone else has for him. But now when you're a first team player, that whole dynamic changes, right? And so I think for me, it's really about how does he continue to integrate into the team, and how does the speed of this level. And when I say speed, I'm not talking about physical speed. I'm talking about processing speed, positioning, little nuances in the middle midfield, which is again some of the tougher positions to play when you're going up a level is in the middle of the midfield, because the game's 360 degrees around you. You have to have eyes in the back of your head, and people are closing you down from different angles. And so I think with each of the young guys that are coming up, it's more about just seeing their progress and not having any expectations that they need to be the guy. And I think that way we can bring them along in a way that is commiserate to where they're at and how they're experiencing the game. And so, I think Noel did that last year. He came up from the Monarchs, and it took him. He broke in probably, I don't know, 10, 12 games into the season, but once he got the hang of it, he was flying. And so those are some of the things. And then, Omar and Wangio too. Like this is their first real, they're up against a real professional team who've been, they're in mid-season form and they're big guys and so with a ton of experience. So I think with all the youngers that stepped in today, it's really about just, having patience with them, helping them along, and when they're ready, they'll get another crack.
And the new system, a lot of people, I think, well, myself included, excited for three in the back. Was that a move for a defensive reasons or offensive reasons? What was the mindset was it a roster decision? You just have enough players, you need to play differently.
No, I think again, I think like our build, and it's confusing at times because sometimes we use Rafa in the deeper build, so it looks like almost four in the back with Rafa. But the last couple of years, we've attacked in a 3-2-4-1, and then the difference being is oftentimes we pinned our wing backs, and so we'd use a winger on our right side, and we'd ask Alex or Sam to get to get to the highest line in the attack, and so that it was an asymmetrical setup from a 4-2-3-1, and that's the shape that we defended in, and so to make it a bit more symmetrical. And again, I think the only reason you want to be asymmetrical, and we started this when Andres Gomez was around, was because we wanted to build in a three, but a defend in a four, so our star winger wouldn't have to drop all the way back and defend, right? And so that's the reason behind that. And so I think what this shape does is just provide a little bit more balance. It doesn't put such a stress on a outside back turning into wing back and then reverting back to an outside back. Um, and there's still little areas that we have to touch up on, in particular in the second half and sometimes in the first half. Our right side center back was too wide at times in the build where we're killing our own passing lanes and making it really difficult to find exits out of that position. So those are things that we'll work on tomorrow. But I think overall, it's just more clear when you defend the shape, attack in a shape, and defend in the same shape. It just the transfer of information to the players is simpler, more clear, and so hopefully we can gain 2 or 3% more from each player because it's not such a drastic change for a couple of positions.
Lastly, from me, just curious with the new system, new players, and you're probably working on getting more players into the roster before the end of the window.
Mhm.
Is this we're going to be ready game one, or is it a process of maybe, it's going to build through the new year, through the new season, a few games?
I mean,
What do you expect? What are your expectations, I
yeah,
guess?
my expectation is that we'll be ready, game one. That's the way I prepare. I don't, that's why we're putting in a lot of work now, where even if we have a couple other players joining the group, it'll be really specific work with those guys to get to the crux of what we're trying to do on both sides of the ball. And the anticipation is that these players will have a bit of experience in the game, so that it won't. My guess is it wouldn't take long for them to adapt quickly. But I think the most important thing is that this is the majority of the team that we have, and it's really important for them to get dialed in, get reps, feel comfortable in the shape, so that when new players come along, it won't be changing everything for anyone. It'll be sitting down with this player and just going through some of the video stuff and then working it on the field. So I feel like, our goal and what we talked about is, we're working back from Vancouver to today, and we're, with the amount of minutes the players are getting, working with our performance staff. So the expectation is that we'll be ready to go game one.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep, right.
Matty Casey, last one in English.
Hey, coach, congratulations on the win.
Thanks, Manny. Good to see you, man.
What was the message coming out of halftime? Obviously exciting to see Tyler score right after the break. What were the coaching staff trying to get the players to do with the large number of subs?
Yeah, well, again, I think the message was kind of the same for both groups. Is we wanted to, like I said earlier, just those two aspects of our structure and the principles that we've been working on in camp in the first 8 days. And then the other part was just, it's funny because they're building out a certain way and caught us a couple times in the first half. And so, showed them a couple clips. We showed them a couple clips as to how we can adjust our setup to match theirs. And then they go on and change it in about 15 minutes into that half. So, but it's preseason. So, I think again, the message to them before the game was like, listen, there's the only mistakes that I care about today is if you make a mistake and then you have a poor reaction. Other than that, I anticipate a lot of mistakes. But I want to, compete the right way, support each other, and just enjoy the game. It's even tough in 8 days, like, not playing against an opponent, it gets a bit stale at times. And so if you can't enjoy a game against a top first division team in a different country, then this game isn't really experienced the way it should. So just really pleased at how they attacked the game.
Thank you. A lot of confusion, I guess, or thought has gone into from the fan base what's going to happen on the right-hand side with Dominic coming back, which I guess some people found surprising. With you've got Yedlin and Gozo there.
Hmm.
What did you see from Gozo up top? And with, new players could potentially come in at any time, but what are you
Yeah.
looking at on that right side right now? Like, not to make a prisoner of words, like this guy is going to be this position or that position, but how do you get those three guys together?
Yeah, no, I think the one thing, Maddie, is a lot of people try to pick the 11, right? And I think for me, it's why we have preseason to see how the different profiles of those players, Gozo obviously being a much more attacking option, um, DeAndre being a much more defensive option. And then I think Dom hits kind of the sweet spot and does a little bit of both really well. So it's like, I think in order to be a competitive team in this league, you got to have depth. And if you have depth, you're going to have competition. And so I think it'd be too early to kind of state exactly what that looks like. We'll give those guys reps in different positions. Because again, I think Gozo has played the 10, the running 10. He's played the 9. I thought he was really good tonight as well. And in particular for Dom and Gozo, the more positions that you can play, the quicker the understanding for the game as far as the bigger picture comes into play, as opposed to just being really, really positional. So we'll see how we go. I think, Dom and Gozo tonight did a great job. I think at times, DeAndre was playing a little bit wide in our build, and I think that's because he's comfortable as an outside back or a wing back. So that's a position that he's adjusting to as a right side center back. So we'll kind of see how it goes, but I think the three of those players provide tactical flexibility to attack different teams with different options.
And then last one for me, what's the biggest thing you want the whole group, coaching and players, to bring into the next match against Brøndby?
Yeah, I think go again. We had this. Like I said, we were working on our pressing from the front, and it was a tough day for us coaches because the players didn't execute what we wanted. And so we, that afternoon I was pondering like, what do we do from here? Because again, this is a new system, and we can talk about it's going to take time, but how can we be proactive? So we have a beautiful facility here in Portugal, and we have two big rooms, and sent one team into one room and the other team in the other room, and they each had a video analyst. I put down 3 or 4 questions as to about the defensive shape, and I asked them to cut a couple clips each and then present to the whole team. And it was one of the most impressive exercises, only because the next day when we went out on the field, it looked like it was a different group of players. And so I think when coaches provide a bit of clarity and an environment where we're all learning, I think the players take that on. And like even today, there's moments where I'm hearing these guys just communicating and talking about what we're going through, and so that's pretty powerful. So again, I think just building on that, that was a rounded way of answering your question, but like that's what I want to see, because at the end of the day, the players that are in a great frame of mind, that understand the tactics, that want to compete for one another, allow you, uh, will put you in great positions to win games. And obviously, Bromby's going to be a different game. They're a top team in that division, and so we just have to do all these little things a little bit better whilst trying to gain fitness. And so I think that's always the challenge because we want to push the guys, but we also understand that everyone judges where the group is based upon these preseason games. And so how do you get that balance where you're trying to expedite the fitness piece whilst trying to be fresh enough to compete the right way against big teams? So that's a balance we'll strike. But again, just the team spirit for me, Maddie. Again, I should have just said that at the beginning. I don't know why I had so much background, but team spirit is the most important for me in preseason. Long days, it ain't easy, far away from home. Everyone's got something to gripe about, but these guys have been top level from day one, and I'm super proud of what we've been able to achieve in a short 8 days.
Excellent. Thank you very much, man. Enjoy the journey.
Absolutely, bud. Thank you, man.
En español, Carlos Artiles.
Gracias. ¿Qué tal,
Hola,
Pablo?
Carlos.
¿Qué tal, Portugal?
Oh, la comida espectacular.
Mm, Y el grupo de gente nueva, porque otra vez te toca empezar con un grupo de técnicos nuevos, de entrenadores
Ajá.
nuevos, ¿no? ¿Qué tal?
Sí, sí, no, no. Mira, increíble que cómo pasan las cosas en la vida, pero el Jamal y el Fred son muy buena gente y son fantásticos entrenadores. Y yo creo que eh, es como el universo me mandó dos entrenadores nuevos que tienen buenas ideas, pero son buenas personas también. Y eso es muy importante para el grupo y como el Jamal tiene muchas relaciones con los pibes de los Monarchs y la academia, yo creo que los dos son fenómenos, son perfectos para el grupo.
Dice que te he traído ideas nuevas, lo del sistema, que es claramente un sistema ofensivo,
Ajá.
es un sistema un poco arriesgado. ¿Te lo han comentado ellos? ¿Te dieron la idea ellos o es algo que tú querías hacer? Quiero decir, ¿el sistema está basado en que tú tienes una plantilla determinada y quieres sacarle rendimiento a esa plantilla o quieres apostar por este sistema y adaptarlo a los jugadores?
Sí, yo creo que un poco de los dos, ¿no? Porque si no tenemos los jugadores, si no tenemos los
Claro, claro.
carrileros, se hace muy difícil. Pero yo creo que ahora tenemos como jugó el Dom hoy día, tenemos un carrilero del lado derecho con el DeAndre, con el Gozo en el lado izquierdo, tenemos el Alex, tenemos el Ruben que está con nosotros en la pretemporada, pero también el Sam Junquot también puede jugar en esa posición. So, para mí, la sistema es justo para los jugadores que tenemos y más que nada, el año pasado hablamos demasiado de cambiar la sistema, especialmente defensiva. Pero ya como estuvimos en el medio del año, para mí y también no andando muy bien, no quería tirar más arriba de los jugadores con tantos cambios tácticas. Así, yo creo que tenemos ahora 5 semanas más para seguir mejorando el sistema y yo creo que hoy día fue un partido positivo para el grupo.
Ujú. Los 11 que has sacado en una parte y en otra, ¿dicen algo? Es decir, ¿es el titular y el otro es el grupo tal o todavía no lo has definido?
No, todavía no. Lo quería hacer un poco mixto de los dos equipos. El Ameca iba a salir titular al lado de Pablo para darle un poco más apoyo a ese grupo, pero él tuvo un dolor en la rodilla y para estar un poco más seguro con el Ameca, que no lo queremos eh, hacer más daño, entró el Omar. So, para mí es más, y el Alex jugó como el carrilero en ese equipo, y son jugadores que el año pasado salieron titular. Así lo quería hacer, mezclar el grupo. um, y sí, esa era la idea.
Ujú. La gente espera o la afición está esperando que entren refuerzos importantes para el equipo después de las ventas que ha habido. ¿Qué
Ujú,
posiciones esperas que lleguen antes de que comience la temporada? Si va a llegar alguien, que espero que
ujú.
sí. Y coméntame lo de Juan, si me puedes decir algo al respecto.
Sí, mira, sí, mis expectativas son que vamos a traer por lo menos 3, 4 jugadores nuevos. Pero la tema con la inmigración es difícil y uno nunca sabe cuándo, pero espero 3, 4 jugadores nuevos al grupo y vamos, uno en la parte del ataque, uno de los extremos y uno en el medio, otro atrás. Y yo creo que
O sea que
para
en todos
mí,
refuerzos en todas las posiciones.
claro, claro, claro. Y como digo,
No, muy interesante, muy interesante.
sí, no, el campeonato en MLS es muy largo y vos ves que todos los equipos están trayendo jugadores y tenemos que estar preparados para todo. Pero en este momento estamos enfocados en los jugadores que están acá, que tienen la oportunidad de mostrar y jugar y ganar ese puesto, ¿no? Pero espero que van a venir varios, pero no sé cuándo, porque la tema de inmigración.
La cuestión de Juan Cruz, ¿me puedes decir algo o no?
No, no es que te puedo decir, lo único que sé es que el club arregló algo con el creo que
El
era
equipo.
Fogo, ajá, donde, y no sé la historia, pero se arreglaron algo y yo creo que se fue a Bulgaria, creo, de otros préstamos, o sea. No sé todos los detalles de qué pasó, solamente me dijeron que no iba a volver este año. Y no
Ok.
sé si es tema negocio, no sé si es tema del Botafogo, no sé,
Sí,
solamente.
siempre ha habido líos con los equipos brasileños, son complicados de negociar.
Ajá, ajá.
Siempre. Pues me gustó lo que vi, ¿eh? Me gustó lo que vi. O sea que parece que va bien el trabajo y suerte para lo que resta.
Gracias, Carlos.
Chao.
Gracias.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Pablo.